Throughout the many Fallout games, you'll encounter a multitude of mutated creatures. Some of them have a sadder existence than others. These are their stories. Number 6. Lobotomites. Lobotomites are Mojave Wastelanders who have been collected by Big Empty drones and had their organs replaced with electrical variations of them by an auto dock. This was done to keep all Lobotomites contained to the Big Empty, as only those with an actual human brain could bypass the Tesla coils located on the perimeter of the area. The autodock wasn't supposed to lobotomize everyone, but there was a problem with it, so it did, in fact, lobotomize all of the Wastelanders, including the courier from Fallout New Vegas. Lobotomites, as expected based on their name, are incredibly aggressive shells of their former selves, and will attack any non-lobotomites on sight, though they do have a proclivity for collecting random objects. Dr. Dalla in New Vegas' Old World Blues DLC says that 43% of the time, lobotomites will fight for dominance or, quote, inject bodily fluids into each other's orifices, end quote. Number 5. Ghost People. The ghost people found inside Sierra Madre are former construction workers who worked on the Sierra Madre Villa prior to the Great War. The Sierra Madre Casino never actually opened due to the Great War starting shortly before the casino was scheduled to open. The ghost people are a result of exposure to a thick cloud of toxic gas created by Big Empty. The cloud itself was an experiment, but the hazmat suits the workers wore were also an experiment, and were created at the Big Empty itself after the cloud sent someone to the hospital. The suits had locks that corroded after exposure to the cloud, locking the workers inside. The suits also grew stiff with use, trapping the workers inside the villa, continuously being exposed to the cloud until they finally mutated and lived within it. They don't eat, sleep, or communicate, and they are virtually immortal. Their only desires are to drag unlucky travelers into the cloud. What happens after is unknown, as nobody has ever been dragged into the cloud and lived to tell about it. Number 4. Synths. Synths are synthetic humanoids created by the Institute, with Gen 3 synths being indistinguishable from normal humans, to the point where Gen 3 synths don't even know that they're synths most of the time, so for the most part they aren't actually that sad. They believe that they're humans and have no other reason to suspect otherwise, even though they're being controlled by the Institute. When it does become sad is when they discover that they're a synth. They're a machine that was created in a lab, and all their memories are lies. Number 3. Super Mutants. The story of the Super Mutants is terrifying and depressing as all hell. Much like some of the other enemies on this list, they are the result of forced evolutionary virus. There are several types of super mutants found throughout the wastelands, depending on which wasteland you're in. Their creation origins are all a bit different, but the outcomes are largely the same. All super mutants are products of exposing humans to a form of FEV. The most common ways of coming in contact with FEV are via injection, by being dunked into a tank of FEV by a super mutant trying to create some friends, or by being exposed to an airborne form of FEV, like what was used inside Vault 87. You can't actually see someone become a super mutant in any of the games, but the experiments involving FEV are documented in several locations. According to terminals found inside Vault 87, over 90 dwellers died as a result of FEV experimentation. Some of the causes of death include bronchitis, emphysema, and asthma, unexpected organ failure, radioactive agents, and allergic reactions. There were also some accidental deaths, from things like electrical shock, drowning, being crushed by a heavy object, and elevator mishaps, but most deaths were classified as undefined or unexplained. A terminal found inside Vault 87 says that most people, quote, died of a massive loss of brain function and were unable to sustain their basic bodily needs, end quote. One set of tests involved 3 women and 2 men. 3 days after initial exposure to FEV, they were all starting to become more asexual, and it was happening fast. After 10 days, their skin was becoming thicker and more resistant to damage. After 14 days, they all started exhibiting severe bouts of anxiety and rage. They were then killed. The process of becoming a super mutant is both physically and psychologically traumatizing, making them one of the saddest types of enemies found in Fallout. Number 2. Ghouls. Ghouls, in a way, are very similar to super mutants. Instead of being exposed to a virus, they have mutated after prolonged exposure to intense amounts of radiation, though there is evidence found in Camp Searchlight that some people transform rapidly after exposure to ridiculous amounts of radiation. It's likely due to genetics, as the radiation will just kill some people instead of turning them into a ghoul. and some who do turn don't retain their cognitive abilities and become feral monsters. All ghouls experience a series of horrible mutations. Their skin decays and dies, in some cases leading to them losing limbs. Their muscles have become more fragile and weak. Their hair falls out, but they do have exceptionally long lives, some even having been alive before the Great War. Because of how disgusting they look, ghouls are often discriminated against throughout the wasteland. This is largely due to the feral ghouls attacking anything and everything, so most people just assume that all ghouls are the same. The discrimination has led to many ghouls forming a strong hatred of humans, and even forming their own communities. Honorable mentions. Marked Men. Marked men are very similar to ghouls. They're NCR and Legion soldiers who were in the Divide when the courier accidentally set off a nuclear bomb. The bomb caused strange, massive storms to take place, flaying the skin off the soldiers, but the radiation turned them into ghouls, leaving them to suffer indefinitely. Troggs. Visually, Troggs look like a type of feral ghoul, but are not solely the result of radiation. Troggs are humans who have been infected with TDC, or troglodyte degeneration contagion, in conjunction with radiation. The infection turns them feral, causing them to kill anything on sight, even loved ones. Some chatter amongst Troggs indicates that they still retain some of their memories, but the infection overpowers their will. Number 1. Harold. Harold was once a man. He was born in 2072, 5 years before the Great War, and lived inside Vault 29. Vault 29's experiment involved sending a dweller out to the wasteland to observe and report back to the vault, but they wouldn't actually be allowed back in. Harold was one of those unlucky enough to be sent out. He was actually with Richard Gray when they traveled to Mariposa Military Base. While Gray fell into a vat of FEV and eventually became the Master, Harold was exposed to radiation and turned into a ghoul. During the events of Fallout 1, Harold had become a ghoul and is a beggar on the street. He provides the Vault Dweller with vast amounts of information on Mariposa Military Base and the Master. At some point between 2162 and 2241, a small tree sprouted out of Harold's head, which he promptly names Bob. By 2208, during Fallout 2, Harold lost an arm, a toe, and an eye, and tasks the Initiate with finding them. By the 2250s, Harold and Bob had become sick, and they ventured back towards Vault 29, where he encountered a tribe of former dwellers. Their leader gave him a cure, which restored them to their former glory. Harold, after spending a considerable amount of time with the tribe, moves on. All the while, Bob was growing. By 2277, Bob had taken over, turning Harold into a tree, making him unable to move. He was stuck in the ground in Oasis. He could, however, use nearby trees to see. He would bring in wanderers from the wasteland, hoping they would put an end to his miserable existence, but they instead formed a community around him, viewing him as some sort of god. The lone wanderer encounters Harold and can choose to kill Harold, who is now begging for death. If the lone wanderer chooses not to, Harold will realize how selfish he had been, and will be happy for the first time in decades. Alright, that's going to do it for this video about the 6 saddest Fallout creatures. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, leave a like. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video or didn't learn anything. Follow me on Twitter at Mitten Squad. My name is Paul of Mitten Squad. Have a wonderful day.